Do you know anything? Could you briefly explain what would happen to regular Norma? I can't give away too much, although she gets a little wilder after a while. I hear it might be a new love interest. Perhaps. Peggy Lipton met Quincy Jones on a Bahamas sailboat in 1969. In reality, what appeared to be a harmless encounter marked the start of the most contentious romance in Hollywood. He had a spouse. She was becoming well known. However, neither was able to stop what followed. They concealed their relationship from the public for 5 years. Everyone was amazed when they eventually got married in 1974. However, their interracial relationship was not the actual scandal. Quincy had been keeping it a secret for 15 years. On August 30, 1946, Peggy Lipton was born in New York City. Her family appeared to be ideal on the surface. They were well educated, socially regarded, and rich. Her father was a corporate lawyer with Harvard training. Her family had previously played a significant role in Dublin's Jewish community, and her mother was an artist. They resided in one of the most upscale communities, Lawrence, in Nassau County. However, the truth beneath that well-preserved exterior was more darker than anyone outside the family could have imagined. Peggy was raised in an environment of generational trauma and unsaid suffering. Her mother's side, whose relatives had left Latvia as Jewish refugees, contributed to it to some extent. Her mother had an intense need for appearances and control. Peggy Ann was her given name at birth. However, Rita changed it to Margaret Ann. Although it appeared to be a minor issue, it revealed a more significant reality about their home. In their social circle, appearance was more important than sincerity. Even if it meant concealing what was actually going on, they wanted to appear respectable. Peggy began to stammer so badly at the age of 7 that she occasionally lost the ability to pronounce her own name. She was once a vibrant child, but it made her shy and reserved. Speaking in front of the class could result in disgrace. Therefore, school became a place of fear. Adults never connected it to the trauma she had experienced, dismissing it as a phase. It was actually a physical manifestation of the emotional harm she was enduring. Peggy would subsequently claim that she felt depressed and melancholy, occasionally holding her breath to experience what it could be like to die. One day, acting would be her escape. However, she was confined to her own silence at that moment. When her father assisted her in signing with Island Fort's renowned modeling agency, when she was 15, her life started to take a different turn. For a teenager who could hardly pronounce her own name without stuttering, it was an incredible break. She had big brown eyes, ash blonde hair, and a tall, slender frame. Before long, her image started showing up in national fashion magazines. She appeared to be living the life of luxury. She continued to struggle with the same depressing ideas on the inside, turning to cocaine, marijuana, and diet pills as coping mechanisms. The irony was incisive. Although she could model for the world to see, her speech issue kept her up at night, worried about avoiding specific words on set. The family relocated to Los Angeles in 1964, when she was 18. The change was abrupt and profound. Peggy left home and relocated to Topanga Canyon in a matter of months. She threw herself into the music scene, vegetarianism, yoga, meditation, and the counterculture. Surrounded by people who shared her appearance and lifestyle, she characterized the 1967 Monterey Pop Festival as a spiritual awakening. Alongside British actor Terence Stamp, she also tried peyote at this time. Although it was freedom, it was risky for someone who still had severe injuries. She secured a deal with Universal Pictures that same year. Despite the terrible twist, it was a significant professional step. Speaking was necessary for acting, and her stutter frequently caused her to freeze or seem as though she had forgotten her lines. However, she was able to speak clearly while reading from a script. She was forced to take the parts that the studio assigned her, regardless of their own preferences. At the age of 19, she made her television debut on The John Forsythe Show in 1965. Although it was a humble beginning, it was the turning point for Peggy as she transitioned from fashion model to actress. She starred in Mr. Novak, the FBI, The Alfred Hitchcock Hour, The Road West, The Virginia, The Invaders, and Bewitched throughout the course of the following few years. These jobs weren't just any old jobs. Each one put her in front of viewers who were both receptive to new faces and devoted to their favorite programs. She experienced psychological suspense, a genre that would eventually influence her work in Twin Peaks, when she appeared on the Alfred Hitchcock Hour. In a rare family moment during her early career, she even appeared on TV alongside her brother, Robert Lipton, in a Mr. Novak episode in 1965. Peggy made her cinematic debut in The Western Blue in 1968. It was another family relationship. Robert, her brother, also starred in the film as Antonio, a character who was killed in a spectacular gunfight. Peggy got to collaborate with well-known actors Terence Stamp, Joanna Pettit, and Carl Malden on the movie. The speed was slower and the scope was larger than that of television. During a year when everything in her career was changing, working on Blue with her brother provided her with experience and a sense of security. The Mod Squad brought about that shift. In 1968, ABC brought something new to television with the casting of Peggy Lipton as Julie Barnes. Her persona was a fugitive from the home of a prostitute mother, imprisoned for stealing and burdened by a tumultuous history. Due to Peggy's personal understanding of brokenness, the portrayal felt authentic. She once said that when she read lines from a screenplay, she didn't stutter. She gained freedom from playing a different person that she never had in real life. From 1969 to 1972, she received 4 consecutive Emmy nods for her delicate, vulnerable performance. In addition to 4 Golden Globe nominations, she was one of the youngest people to win the Golden Globe for Best Actress in a Television Series Drama in 1971. When she was only 24 years old, her victory was more than just a personal triumph because it occurred during the height of the Civil Rights Movement and the Vietnam War. Television was ready to embrace counterculture themes, as seen by Peggy's Price and Julie Barnes' role as a liaison between the establishment and dissident youth. A revolution in style was also brought about by her rapid success. Love beats, bell-bottoms, miniskirts, and Peggy's long, straight ash blonde hair all became popular across the country. Ironically, she acknowledged that being famous made her paranoid and had no interest in the limelight. Nevertheless, by 1970 department stores were carrying clothing lines with Mod Squad influences, and fashion publications were promoting the Julie Barnes image. Women all throughout the nation were requesting the Peggy Lipton cut at hair salons. Her aesthetic made hippie culture more approachable and less intimidating for suburban America. Her 1966 Deb Star of the Year award from the Hollywood Makeup and Hairstylists Guild foreshadowed her future impact even before the program started. When the Mod Squad debuted on September 24, 1968, it defied television regulations. The radical concept of utilizing young hippie characters as undercover police officers was first presented by it. Instead of using conventional police techniques, they relied on street smarts and did not carry firearms. The program addressed topics like abortion, racism, PTSD in Vietnam veterans, domestic abuse, and police brutality that no other network drama at the time dared to address. One of the first multiracial lead casts on primetime television was also on it. It was so well regarded by 1970 that one of its episodes received an Edgar Award nomination for Outstanding Mystery Teleplay. Peggy attempted to pursue a career in music at the height of her popularity on television. Her self-titled album was published by Lou Adler's Ode Records in 1968. It featured covers of popular songs by singer-songwriters of the time, including Laura Nyro's Stony End, which she recorded 2 years before, to the well-known version by Barbara Streisand. On the Billboard Bubbling Under list, her rendition peaked at number 121. Other songs, such as Lou, which peaked at number 45 in Canada, in February 1970, also saw chart success. She was one of the first television stars to enter the recording business, even if her music career never quite matched her TV success. But her life was considerably darker behind the camera. She acknowledged that she could hardly appreciate her accomplishment In her 2005 memoir, she feared dealing with the media, had severe social anxiety, and seldom ever left her home. Childhood trauma, including a severe stutter that once made it difficult for her to state her own name, was the core cause of her shyness. Her insecurities were not resolved by fame, they were amplified. Her love life was as tumultuous. She started an affair with Paul McCartney during Beatlemania when she was 18. She briefly dated Elvis Presley in 1968, although she later stated that he was largely impotent at the time. She had barely escaped having sex with an obstinate Sammy Davis Jr. and had other well-known romances with Terence Stamp, Keith Moon, and Lou Adler. There were even accusations that she tried to get Elvis interested in Scientology, which led to the end of their romance. Even though millions of people loved her, she said she felt incredibly alone. She claimed that she had led a very solitary existence before to meeting Quincy Jones in 1973. She acknowledged that her romantic relationships were more fantasy than reality, and that she frequently dated emotionally unavailable men. She used to fantasize about dying and tried to feel what her final breath may be like when she was younger, which was a reflection of the macabre ideas she concealed beneath her calm, self-assured public persona. She was exploited by the industry at a young age. She was thrust into a world that sexualized her as soon as she was signed by the Island Ford modeling agency at the age of 15. By the age of 17, she had mastered the art of using her appearance as a cover for her low self-esteem. To deal with her sadness, she started taking diet pills, cocaine, and marijuana. She was worn out from the demanding Mod Squad shooting schedule. She was also burned out and even more reclusive by the end of the 5-year run. She struggled to maintain herself in the same system that made her famous. When fate landed Peggy Lipton on a sailboat in the Bahamas with Quincy Jones in 1969, she was barely 22 years old and at the height of her Mod Squad stardom. A mutual acquaintance organized the trip, and their first encounter was framed by the peaceful sway of the boat. Jones was already a married man, and more significantly, a top-tier music producer. Lipton subsequently stated that she experienced an instant attraction to him, a silent confidence she was unable to articulate. But she realized there was no use in allowing her dreams to run amok. Ulola Anderson, a Swedish model, was his wife, and she controlled her emotions. The moment stuck with her even as that lovely afternoon passed. They had no idea that it would be the beginning of a romance that would captivate Hollywood for many years to come. In 1974, 5 years later, Lipton heard rumors circulating in Hollywood that Jones had split up. She has dated well-known people like Ryan O'Neal and Elvis Presley in the intervening years. However, the recollection of that Bahamas day had remained strong. Curious to find out if the time was finally right, she contacted Jones through his daughter Jolly. Lipton laughed when Jolly came back with an answer. She was among the top 10. Jones went on to say, "But you had a bullet, baby." This indicated that she was rapidly rising to the top. Immediately, the spark flared up again. Lipton moved into his Los Angeles house 2 weeks after they reconnected. Knowing that Jones didn't trust a woman who couldn't manage herself in the kitchen, she even learned to cook before she moved in. In order to score movies close to her, he installed a movie editing computer in their bedroom, bringing his work into their personal lives as well. Their lives took an abrupt and terrifying change that same year. Jones almost died as a result of 2 consecutive brain aneurysms that occurred when he was 41. He was at home with Lipton when the first one suddenly hit. According to him, it felt like a shotgun blast had removed the back of my head. After 7.5 hours of surgery to fix the damage, doctors discovered another aneurysm on the verge of rupturing. Without delay, they carried out a second operation, extracting a portion of his skull and reattaching it using 6 metal clips. Friends started planning a memorial ceremony at the Los Angeles shrine because of how bad his condition was. He then remarked that it seemed as if he had been present at his own funeral while still alive. Although the surgeries saved his life, the pressure of playing the trumpet may be fatal, so his career was permanently stopped. He and Lipton made the decision to get married in the midst of this precarious recuperation. cementing a relationship that was as much influenced by survival as by love. They were directly confronted by the bigotry that was still pervasive in society when they were married in 1974. According to Lipton's memoirs, Breathing Out, discrimination became a part of their everyday existence. They were frequently stopped by police because they thought Lipton, a white, blonde woman, was a prostitute who was being coerced into Jones's vehicle. They became accustomed to it because it occurred so frequently. When it came from her own family, the discrimination was much more pronounced. Her mother publicly stated that she couldn't see her daughter having mixed-race children or dating a black man. Eventually, Lipton informed her mother that she would either have to accept the connection or risk losing her completely. Although the open opposition was halted by that ultimatum, the harm persisted. Hadata, Peggy Lipton and Quincy Jones's first daughter, was born in March 1974. Rashida was born in February 1976. 2 years later, the arrival of two mixed daughters compounded the societal difficulties they already faced. As their marriage had previously generated controversy, children of mixed races at the period frequently faced discrimination and exclusion. According to Lipton's mother, she had never envisioned a black guy with mixed-race children for her daughter, but rather a white prince, charming, or a great Jewish king. It was only after meeting her grandkids that she started to soften. After a while, Kata transferred from her primarily white private school to a mostly black public high school, where she felt comfortable. In contrast, Rashida first encountered racial conflict during the height of identity politics at Harvard University. Both girls went on to have prosperous professions. Rashida, for example, starred in movies like The Social Network and in Parks and Recreation. In contrast, Kadata had a well-known friendship with rapper Tupac Shakur and made appearances in music videos. Their early life experiences influenced their dedication to diversity advocacy and multicultural causes. At the height of her career, Lipton was only 27 years old when the Mod Squad disbanded in 1973. She could have secured decades of main roles, had 4 Emmy nominations, and won a Golden Globe. To raise her daughters, she decided to give up performing entirely. She claimed that after 5 years of non-stop labor, she was burned out and had become insecure and reclusive due to the attention. The lone exception to her 15-year hiatus from Hollywood was her 1979 reappearance in the television film The Return of the Mod Squad. At that point, Lipton was totally focused on being there for Hadada, who was 5, and Rashida, who was 3. She later acknowledged that she didn't even know how to call people to reapply for a job when Twin Peaks came out in 1990. She was the most unconditionally lovely person, and she was always there to help at auditions. As Rashida would later say, it was more than just a reunion when she made a brief appearance on television in 1979 for the return of the Mod Squad. During her lengthy break, it was her sole professional endeavor. The film gave fans a nostalgic glimpse of their favorite characters by bringing back Lipton, Michael Cole, and Clarence Williams III 5 years after the series' conclusion. With the production of Michael Jackson's Off the Wall in 1979 and Thriller in 1982, Quincy Jones was simultaneously achieving new heights in his musical career. Although Lipton probably lost millions of dollars in revenue as a result of declining other offers throughout those years, it was evident what her priorities were. When Peggy Lipton and Quincy Jones got married on September 14, 1974, they appeared to be the ideal Hollywood pair. Their relationship appeared solid on the surface for many years, but by the middle of the 1980s, it was subtly failing. Later, Quincy claimed that he was simultaneously coping with 7 of the 10 most stressful situations in his life. He was exhausted from his career in the music business, and his mother's illness increased the strain at home. The burden was partly on Peggy, who had quit performing at the height of her Mod Squad stardom to devote herself to their family. Their once happy Bear household started to feel uncomfortable, with conflicts and emotional detachment. They had been married for 12 years, until they divorced in 1986. At the time, their children, Rashida and Kada, were just 10 and 12 respectively. They had always appeared to be genuinely in love, thus the revelation was shocking to the public. In fact, they had been drifting apart for years already. Peggy reared the girls throughout their 3-year absence, while Quincy kept up his rigorous work schedule, citing irreconcilable differences. Peggy filed for divorce in Los Angeles on October 10, 1989. Their romance, which began in 1969 when they met on a friend's boat in the Bahamas, came to an official end when she requested joint custody and support. One of the most well-known interracial marriages in Hollywood came to an end when the divorce was completed in 1990. Years of stress, professional demands, and unsaid betrayals were hidden under the legalese. Decades later, one of those betrayals was exposed. During their marriage, Quincy, who was 84 at the time, disclosed in an interview in 2018 that he had 22 girlfriends worldwide. He asserted that the women were all aware of one another and listed cities ranging from Shanghai to Cape Town. He even said that because some of the women he dated were younger than his daughters, they had to establish an age restriction for them. It was evident from her revelation that Peggy had suffered much more than the general public ever realized. Their children were also profoundly affected by the divorce. Following their 1990 breakup, 14-year-old Rashida remained with Peggy, while Hidata, who was 16 at the time, decided to live with Quincy. Because of the arrangement, the sisters were raised apart and were influenced by quite distinct upbringings. Later, Rashida remarked that although the separation was difficult, it was made easier by her parents' ongoing relationship. Nevertheless, the division of their house had a long-lasting effect on both daughters, and birthdays, holidays, and family gatherings became challenging. On March 28, 1988, Peggy Lipton made her broadcast comeback after a 15-year hiatus. In order to concentrate on her family with Quincy Jones, she had quit acting in 1973. However, by this point, they had split up in 1986 and were getting divorced in 1990. She made a reappearance as an associate district attorney in the ABC TV film Addicted to His Love. Barry Bostwick portrayed a charming con artist who pretended to be someone else in order to defraud middle-aged ladies via dating services. The narrative followed 4 ladies who deduced his plan and conspired to use a different lady as bait in order to capture him. Lipton, who was 41 when she accepted the job, demonstrated that, in Hollywood at the time, an actress could still earn a good main role after her 30s. She played a self-assured legal professional in the part, which was a stark contrast to her Mod Squad days, and demonstrated her development as an actress. She was hired for the position that would shape the remainder of her career 2 years later, in 1990. She was cast by David Lynch as Twin Peaks' Norma Jennings, given Lynch's reputation for collaborating with fresh talent. Lipton's casting was surprising. Norma was the amiable proprietor of the Double or Diner, which was well known for its cherry pie and coffee. Her romance with Everett McGill's character, Big Ed Hurley, was adored by viewers and went on to become one of the most iconic love tales on television. During the show's 2-season run from 1990 to 1991, critics applauded Lipton's performance, saying the part better reflected her true personality than her previous stardom ever could. For a lot of spectators, Norma Jennings permanently took the position of Julie Barnes from the Mod Squad. She remained faithful to the Twin Peaks universe in 1992 by making an appearance in Twin Peaks: Fire Walk with Me, directed by David Lynch. The film, which debuted to boos at the Cannes Film Festival, was darker than the series. It was a hazardous move for her because it also didn't do well at the box office. She was still proud of her contribution though. Lipton demonstrated her ability to adjust to shifting television trends outside of Twin Peaks. She had recurrent parts in shows including Popular and Crash in the late 1990s and early 2000s. When she portrayed Kelly Foster in Popular, she entered a contemporary teen drama that was completely different from the counterculture she was known for in the 1960s. She co-starred with her daughter Rashida Jones in NG Tribeca in 2017. Her portrayal of Rashida's character's mother, Peggy Tribeca, brought their bond from real life to the film. With the Twin Peaks rebirth and this family partnership, that year turned into a turning point for her. Born on February 25th, 1976, Rashida rose to fame as an actor in films such as The Office, Parks and Recreation, and The Social Network. Her documentary about her father, Quincy Jones, even earned her a Grammy. Hadata, Lipton's other daughter, had also established a successful career in entertainment. In addition to her well-known television performances, Peggy Lipton left behind a familial legacy that kept her in the public eye until the end of her life. Breathing Out, Peggy Lipton's book, was published in 2005 and was 310 pages long. It, which David and Coco Dalton co-wrote, dismantled the glitzy, kind persona that many believed they were familiar with. She talked candidly about her experiences with sexual assault, adultery, and an abortion in it, as well as her interactions with Paul McCartney and Elvis Presley. She talked about the agony of dealing with racist criticism when married to Quincy Jones in the 1970s. Even her own mother found the connection difficult to accept, stating that she had hoped Peggy would end up with a magnificent Jewish monarch or a charming white prince. Lipton also said that she didn't feel confident enough to really appreciate her greatest accomplishment on the Mod Squad. Because of its candor, the book became a bestseller and gave readers a completely new perspective on Hollywood in the 1960s and 1970s. Peggy was diagnosed with colon cancer in 2004 when she was 58 years old. She had recently finished a successful theater run in the Vaginal Monologues when she received the diagnosis. According to medical data, she might have received the diagnosis around 2003. However, her treatment continued into the next year and most likely involved radiation, chemotherapy, and surgery. In her memoir, she referred to her victory over the illness as her most recent victory. According to her daughter Rashida, the event strengthened the bonds within the family. Her initial recovery demonstrated the tenacity that characterized her life, even though it would take another 15 years for the disease to recur. Peggy Jones and Quincy Jones remained close even after their 1989 divorce. Before formally terminating their 15-year marriage, they had been apart for 3 years. However, they protected Rashida and Kada, their daughters, from the worst aspects. As though the marriage had never ended, they collaborated on family issues and co-parented with an uncommon affection. Rashida told Entertainment Weekly in 2018 that their intimacy, which stemmed from love, made everything simpler. Even in Rashida's Netflix documentary Quincy co-starred with Peggy. He referred to their love as eternal when she passed away. At the age of 72, Peggy passed away at home on May 11, 2019, flanked by her nieces, Rashida and Kadata. Her daughters referred to her as their beacon of light and stated she went away quietly. She had previously defeated colon cancer, but it had returned and spread. When word of her passing spread throughout Hollywood, friends and co-stars who had known her during her 5-decade career began to pay their respects. For many, her death signaled the end of a chapter in the history of Hollywood in the 1960s and 1970s, as well as the loss of a beloved actress.